The following broadcast is a presentation of Mount Zion Media Ministry.
Of Psalms, Psalm 143 and verse 6. Amen. Psalm 143 and verse 6. And it says, I spread out my hands to you. I thirst for you like a parched land. I spread out my hands to you. I thirst for you like a parched land. Amen. You may be seated. And the subject of the sermon today, I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty. Amen. I want to first just, let me ask the ushers if they would be seated at this point. And I'm going to move on in this message. I'm thirsty. There's an urban, if you will, definition of being thirsty. And I heard a little grunt from some of you when I announced my subject because I think that's where your mind went. It's the idea of longing for something, of being in need, and demonstrating clearly to everybody around you that you are in need, you are longing. It's almost as if, depending upon how thirsty you are, you just lose your sensibility. There's some people, for example, who are thirsty for attention. And so when they're in a setting, no matter how inappropriate it is, they're going to always do something to draw attention to themselves. Yeah. There are some people who are so thirsty for a relationship, they chase a man or a woman. They don't, just wait on the opportunity for there to be some kind of mutual attraction. They're like a hound dog on the trail of a coon, making all kind of noise, all kind of stuff, just trying to treat that coon. And hungry for money, hungry for status, thirsty for this and that. But today, I want to share with you that maybe the reason you are in this continuous spiral, this continuous cycle of being thirsty and thinking that you have found that which can satisfy your thirst, only to discover a few months later, a week later, that you are thirsty again. You rejoice for a moment. I got it. I'm so happy. I'm so satisfied. But then come back later, and there you are, thirsty all over again. And I want to suggest that maybe you've been thirsting after the wrong thing. In this text today, David declares that he is thirsty. And for the sake of time, what I've decided to do is verses 1 through 5 builds us up to verse 6. And I didn't want to take the time to take you through that this morning, but Wednesday night in Bible study, I'm going to show you the process of how David came to understand what he was truly thirsty for. So you can stop chasing the wrong thing. But today in this message, I just want to deal with what it means to be thirsty, how it impacts your body, your mind, and your spirit. And so let me ask media to put the subject back up again with that vision of the parched land. David uses this image. He says, I'm thirsty, I am like parched ground. When you look at that soil, for the sake of simplicity, that soil does not appear to be what it was designed to be. Instead of being cracked and dry, that soil should be soft. It should be covered with vegetation, with grass. It should be filled with trees, with other kinds of plants. It should be a place of providing food and nutrient for the ecosystem, but instead it's sitting there dry, cracked, parched. And there's something that you and I need to get about this parched land. Again, for the sake of simplicity, the land was designed by God in this ecosystem to provide for itself based on what it had coming into it, all that it needed to sustain itself. This soil could not sustain itself, but God created a system so that the nutrients it needed, the water it needed, the fertilization it needed, it would all come to it, and there would be this exchange of resources between the sand and everything else in the ecosystem. But because it did not get what it needed, it could no longer sustain itself, and as a result, it dried up and it got all these cracks in it. The other side of that, it is not designed by God to just sustain itself, but again, to produce something for others to get. Thank God for fields of corn. Thank God for fields that produce turnip greens. The birds thank God for the soil that produced those worms. And on it goes. There's this exchange. And so there was not enough coming in. And at the same time, the soil was constantly giving, and then it reached a place where it couldn't sustain itself and couldn't produce anything to help anybody else. What I'm trying to say to you is you and I can become that soil. When we go through life not getting what we need from the ecosystem that we are a part of to sustain ourselves, then we will become parched. We go to ourselves for strength, and there is none. We look within ourselves for joy, but there is none. We look to ourselves for some peace. There is none. We look to ourselves for clarity, the capacity to make decisions. There is none. We have been people. You were a person. I was a person who could make some stuff happen, who knew how to put it together. But all of a sudden, we can't make stuff happen. Because everything in us is depleted. We don't have anything to draw from. And then there are people around us who can't see that we are parched land. And so while we are struggling to survive, they still reaching. I don't have anything, but you want me to give you something. You want love from me when I don't have love to give. You're in turmoil and you want me to help you find peace. I can't find it for myself. You weak and life is beating you up and you want to lean on me for strength. I don't have anything for you to lean on. You can't find clarity. You can't make decisions, and you want me to make. I can't do it. Family falling apart. You looking for me to hold us together. Look at me. I'm falling apart. I'm a parched land. Don't you see these cracks? Don't you see the brokenness? Open your eyes. But here is what happens. Sometimes we're so busy trying to get that we can't see the brokenness around us. And then I had no idea they were going through that. I had no idea he was in there. You know why you had no idea? Because you were looking one way. Me. Yeah. You were looking. And you were bringing nothing to the soil to replenish what you were taking away. Even the squirrels and the little animals who come and find refuge in the ground, homes to live in and food to eat, at least when they got some nuts from some tree, they drop some. So what ends up happening, where that was dropped, the soil has enough in it to now take that and nurture it, and then that tree provides something for the soil, and the soil provides something for the tree, and they both grow. But you won't even drop a little something. If you drop it, you turn around trying to pick it back up. Soil that's in good shape don't have cracks like that. Cracked soil have cracks because it is trying to say, I need something. And I am open for the something to come in. Parched, dry. And the idea of this Hebrew word thirsty also means weary and exhausted. So the soil is saying, I'm tired. I've been trying to sustain myself. I've been trying to produce stuff for others to thrive and live, and I'm tired. I'm weary. Look at me. Look how dry and parched I am weary. And it's one thing to be weary, and that weariness be recognized by others, and they try to help you to be replenished, to be restored. But it's another thing to be weary, and folk don't recognize it, and in the midst of your weariness, they are still pulling on you. You wonder why folks snapping. You wonder why they want to distance themselves from you. Weary, exhausted. And exhaustion has to do with the fact that everything in me that could sustain me or help you has been depleted. I've exhausted every means, every resource. I'm on empty. I hope you can see yourself somewhere in there, and you don't just see somebody else. I hope I tried to make it simple and plain that we, children of God, can easily become like a parched land. And let me say this to you. One of the things I'm going to talk about Wednesday night is David's honesty. And he got to verse 6 where he could plead for help and just say publicly he was thirsty because he got honest. And too many of us, we don't want to be honest about our parched condition. And so we we put on these faces. We dress up in these nice clothes and some good makeup to cover the cracks. And we pretend, we say to people, look where I live. I live in this house, in this subdivision, and I got all of these comforts, and surely I don't have cracks. And so we're trying to cover it with how we live it. Trying to cover it with how we drive. I can't be crack riding in this G-Wagon. Look at my shoes. Look at my hair. Look at... Don't I look 20 years younger? Look at me. I'm trying to cover the cracks. And I ain't the only one. Trying to cover the cracks. And you cannot be satisfied. That thirst cannot be met until you start worrying about people in your image and get real. Because I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You're really not fooling us. We know you tore up. We know your life is not all you claim it is. We all of us who've had any level of success, we look at your success and we understand clearly that success does not satisfy your thirst. No. And so here we go. I'm getting ready to mess some of y'all up. Open your Bible here. And so what does David do? David recognized that he's thirsty. Thank you, media. And then he goes to this 6th verse. And David now proceeds to satisfy his thirst. It says, I stretch forth my hands unto thee. Yeah. And when you look at verse 1, David talks about crying out to the Lord. And so David says, getting ready to get some help now. I'm getting ready to get something to satisfy my thirst. And so listen at the language, because this is important. And you're going to have to use it in a little bit. He says, I stretch forth my hands unto thee. David is positioning himself for prayer. And the position he takes is to stretch open hands before God. And what I want to say to you that's going to mess you up is that posture in prayer matters. And it matters because God put it in the book. And listen at me, don't get mad with me, because I'm going to mess you up. And the posture that most Christians use for prayer is wrong. And it's wrong again because you and I bought into it for a while. We were influenced by that contaminated gospel, by that biblical worldview that is not accurate. How many of you got some praying hands? Somebody bought me some praying hands, and how many of you, when you teach your children to pray, you do that right there as a posture of prayer? How many of us have been taught that the posture of prayer is down on your knees? And you know where that false teaching come from? Somebody somewhere in the background of Christian history decided to create some images. And so first there's this image of this boy that they claim is Jesus, which is a lie, and they got him on his knees. Well, examine Mark, the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, 4 Gospels, and nowhere except one time do you find Jesus on his knees praying. And the one time you see him on his knees is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he didn't go there as a posture for prayer. He was on his knees because the burden that he was carrying, the Bible said he was so heavy, he fell. But everywhere else he is praying, he is standing. His hands are not together, his head is not bowed, and his eyes are not closed. Took 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread, looked up. Went down to Lazarus' grave, looked up. You don't find him praying on his knees. You don't find, oh, Father, I pray that you just bless him. That's not the posture God gave us. Shows you the power of images. And so you see Daniel in the lion's den praying. And I had one of those where Daniel was praying, but then I went and got me another one. I got Daniel standing up. Come back to my office, you'll see him. He's standing up in the lion's den. He's a brother too, standing up in the lion's den. Because there's no way Daniel could have had blonde hair. I mean, just genetically, it's humanly impossible. And so, in the Old Testament, write this verse down. 1 Kings chapter 8, 38. 1 Kings chapter 8, 38. Listen what God said to them about prayer. He said, and when a prayer or plea is made by anyone among the people of Israel, being aware of the afflictions of their own hearts, when they are in trouble, they can pray. And listen to how I want them to pray. And spreading out their hands toward the temple. Because the temple was believed to be the place where God was. When they pray, I don't want them on their knees. And let me just say to you now, you can pray on your knees, but don't you think that's the only posture for prayer? It's all right if you want to keep your hand. I'm just trying to say to you, that's not the biblical way, the only way for prayer. And then write this one down. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 8. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 8. Paul, when he's giving Timothy instructions for worship, he says, I will therefore that men pray everywhere, lifting holy hands without wrath and doubting. Lifting holy hands. I will lift my eyes into the hills, lift my hands. And so David gets serious and said, I'm crying out to the Lord. I'm lifting my hands up. David, why are your hands up? Because I'm lifting my hands up as an acknowledgement of the place and the power of God. It's my way of saying, I'm not lifting my hands to John, to Sue, to the government, but I'm lifting my hands to you. I'm acknowledging that you are God and God all by yourself. Children sang a moment ago about him being the sovereign God. I'm lifting my hands to you because you are the sovereign God. I'm lifting my hands to you, not trying to take my hands and fix my problem because I know that these hands can't fix it, but I'm lifting my hands to you because you can fix it for me. And the reason my hands are not together and open because you're going to bless me as a result of my prayer. And so I want my hands to be open so I can receive what you're going to send. Lifting up my hands as an act of surrender to you, Lord. Yeah. Old saints had it right. Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. If thou withdraw thyself from me, oh, whither shall I go? Let me tell you how I just messed some of y'all up. You may have a little problem with, challenging this right here and down on your knees. And again, you can do that. But here's where your real problem is. Your pride won't let you stand up and stretch your hands out and cry out to the Lord. And your pride is going to keep you thirsty. Because you can't get it your way. If God prescribed the path for you to get it, you can't change the path because your pride won't let you walk that way. Yeah. And you have to settle with that. When I was growing up, they had this hamburger place that opened up in Cairo called Chandler's. It was the first fast food restaurant down there, and the hamburgers were pretty good. But I chose not to eat Chandler's because I couldn't go in with the other folk to get their burger. There was a little window on the side. And while I wanted a Chandler's burger, my pride wouldn't let me go to the window. And so I didn't have anybody to blame but me, because some of my friends, they went and got the hamburgers. That's how I know how they taste, because they gave me some of theirs. But I was not going to that window. And as a result of that, I couldn't purchase a burger. And when you make a decision that you can't ask like God asked you to ask, and Paul said, I would everywhere that all men, women, that's y'all too, pray, lifting holy hand. Can you lift your hands in a public place? Let your friends see you while you cry out to the Lord. Listen, come on, open that Bible. And then listen. He also got his posture right, but his perspective is right. He says, my soul thirsted after thee. It's not just a mind thing. It's not just a body craving thing. Because how many of you know the body cravings come and go? And the mind, like the wind, it changes. But David said it's a soul thing. It's a heart thing. It's this thirst is in my inner being. It's in my heart. It's in my emotion. It's in my will. It is in me, all over me, all through me. I am thirsty at every fiber of my being, every part of me. I am thirsty. But listen, he identifies what or who he's thirsty for. My soul thirsted after thee. It is right there, brothers and sisters. I know what I'm thirsty for. I got some problems, I got some issues, but I am not thirsty for a solution. I'm thirsty for the person. I'm thirsty for Jesus. Yeah, I'm thirsty for him. And brothers and sisters, here's what you got to understand. And again, this is our Christian behavior. You think that God is transactional when God is relational. And you can't get God out of who he is to satisfy you. And here's what I mean by transaction. By transaction, that simply means that you want to conduct transactions with God.
Thanks for watching. Be blessed and continue walking in the light.